In 1946, a group of archaeologists discovered texts that changed everything we knew. The tablets found in the ruins of Mesopotamia contained stories that no one ever expected to find. They described beings who descended from the sky, mingled with humans, and begot a race of giants. For decades, scholars classified these accounts as mythology with no connection to any sacred text. But when they compared them line by line with the Book of Genesis, the silence in the community was absolute. The same beings, the same events, and the same consequences appeared in civilizations that never had contact. And that was just the beginning, because the same story also appeared in a source that no one had suspected. Greek mythology, with its gods, titans, and demigods, held the same story word for word. Two mountains separated by thousands of kilometers have kept the exact same secret for millennia. One is in the Bible and the other in Greek mythology, but both tell the same forbidden story. Mount Hermon and Mount Olympus are not just sacred places, they are the setting for the same cosmic event. And what you are about to discover in this video will change the way you understand mythology forever. Because the Greek gods were not deities. They were very real beings that the Bible describes by another name. The official history separated them into two distinct traditions, but the ancient texts reveal another truth. It all begins with a mountain in northern Israel, a place that ancient peoples considered cursed. The Book of Enoch recounts that 200 angels descended upon the peaks of Mount Hermon in ancient times. These celestial beings made a forbidden pact among themselves and swore not to abandon their plan until it was completed. His goal was to cross the sacred barrier between heaven and earth, to unite with the daughters of men. The text refers to them as watchers, beings of immense power who left their celestial abode of their own accord. They were not sent by God, but descended on their own, defying the established order of the cosmos. Genesis chapter 6 confirms this story with words that have puzzled scholars for centuries. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives for themselves from all of them. From that union came the Nephilim, described as the famous men who existed in ancient times. They were not normal humans, they were hybrids of a nature that the world had never seen until that moment. Now cross the Mediterranean and observe what the Greeks said about their own gods on Olympus. Zeus, Poseidon, and the other Olympians lived on a sacred mountain separated from the rest of humanity. But they constantly descended to earth to interact with mortal women and beget offspring. From those unions were born the demigods, beings half divine and half human with extraordinary powers. Heracles, Achilles, and Perseus are the most well-known examples of these children born between a god and a mortal. Mythology describes them as gigantic warriors endowed with superhuman strength and a tragic fate. Does this description sound familiar to you? Because it is exactly what Genesis 6:4 had already recounted. The famous men of biblical antiquity and the semi-divine heroes of Greece are exactly the same phenomenon. Two civilizations separated by centuries and distance described the same event with different words. The Hebrews called them Nephilim, and the Greeks called them demigods, but the essence is completely identical. Beings born from the union between celestial entities and human women, giants of renown and legendary fame. This is not a literary coincidence, it is the trace of a real event preserved in two cultural memories. But the parallel goes much further than births. It extends to every detail of both traditions. Now, observe the Titans, the oldest and most powerful figures in all of known Greek cosmology. They were primordial giants that existed long before the Olympic gods and dominated the entire Earth. His arrogance and power challenged the cosmic order, provoking a war of universal proportions. Now compare them to the Nephilim, giants born of fallen angels who filled the earth with violence. His corruption was so extreme that God himself decided to send the flood to erase his presence from the world. In both cases, we have rebellious giants who challenge the divine order and end up being punished for it. The word Titan carries with it a deep echo that resonates directly with the biblical concept of the Nephilim. Giants who rebelled against the supreme authority and were defeated in a conflict of cosmic scale. We are not facing two independent myths, but rather two versions of the same ancestral and true story. The Nephilim were not only physical giants, they were tyrants who imposed their will over the entire civilization. But there is a detail that makes this theory something much harder to ignore or dismiss easily. The Book of Enoch describes how they consumed the earth's resources until men could no longer feed themselves. The weapons of the Greek gods, those legendary objects that defined their power for thousands of years. The rays of Zeus were not magical manifestations or poetic symbols invented by ancient poets. Poseidon's trident was not just a simple fishing tool elevated to divine status by tradition. The Book of Enoch precisely describes the forbidden technologies that the Watchers taught to mankind. Azazel taught metallurgy and weapon manufacturing, knowledge that transformed the entire civilization. Other Watchers revealed the secrets of astrology, herbalism, and the arts of advanced warfare. These were not mere human skills. They were celestial knowledge, transferred illicitly. Semjaza, the leader of the Watchers, taught enchantments and the cutting of roots for hidden and secret purposes. If the fallen angels really delivered advanced technology to primitive humanity, everything fits now. Each fallen angel had a different specialty, and each one corrupted a distinct aspect of human life. The rays of Zeus could represent an energy technology that the ancients could not fully understand. Poseidon's trident could be the distorted memory of a real and tangible instrument of power. Greek mythology did not invent these divine weapons. It inherited them from a technological memory predating the flood. What the Greeks called divine magic, the Book of Enoch describes as forbidden and true knowledge. Each legendary weapon of Olympus has its exact counterpart in the teachings of the fallen angels. This is not forced interpretation. It is the direct reading of texts that were written in different eras. Two independent sources describe the same phenomenon of superior beings who granted power to humans. Now we come to the most dramatic event of both traditions, the moment when everything changed forever. The Titanomachy was the most devastating war that Greek mythology ever recorded in all its accounts. The Olympic gods fought against the Titans in a conflict that shook the foundations of the universe. The earth shook, the seas overflowed, and the sky darkened during the most epic battle of all. Humanity went from innocence to destruction in a single generation, thanks to that forbidden knowledge. The Titans were defeated and cast into the darkest depths that the Greek mind could imagine. Now observe what the Bible describes before the universal flood in the final chapters of Genesis. The whole earth was corrupted and filled with violence because of the Nephilim and their destructive influence. God saw that the wickedness of man was great, and that every intention of his heart was only evil continually. The divine decision was radical and irreversible to destroy all flesh upon the face of the earth with a flood. The Greek Titanomachy and the biblical flood describe the same cataclysm with different narrative frameworks. In both cases, a cosmic war between superior forces culminates in the destruction of the existing order. In both cases, the rebellious giants are eliminated and the world is restarted from scratch after the disaster. The Greeks told it as an epic battle between gods, and the Bible presents it as total divine judgment. But the result is identical. The giants disappear, and humanity begins a new era from the ruins. However, the most striking parallel is not in the war itself, but in what happened after it. The defeated Titans were not simply eliminated, they were confined to a specific and terrible place. Greek mythology calls that place Tartarus, the deepest and darkest prison beneath the Earth's surface. Hesiod describes it as an abyss so deep that a hammer would take 9 days to reach its bottom. It was an eternal prison, specifically designed to contain beings of immense and uncontrollable power. The Titans were chained there forever, watched over by the Hecatoncheires with their 100 enormous arms. No mortal could access Tartarus, and no Titan could escape from its unbreakable chains. Now, open your Bible to 2 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4, and read these words carefully. The Apostle Peter wrote that God did not forgive the angels who sinned grievously against his sovereign will. He threw them into Tartarus and delivered them to chains of darkness, reserved for the judgment of the coming final day. Hold on a moment and process what you just read, because this detail absolutely changes the entire story. Pedro did not use the Greek word Hades or the Hebrew word Sheol to describe the prison of the angels. He specifically used the word Tartaru, the Greek verb that literally means to throw into Tartarus. It is the only time in the entire Bible that this term appears, and Peter chose it deliberately for that purpose. A first-century Jewish apostle used the exact name of the mythological Greek prison of the Titans. Why would Pedro choose such a specific word if there were no real connection between the two accounts? The most logical answer is that Pedro knew that the Titans and the fallen angels were the same beings. He used the Greek term because his audience would immediately understand who he was talking about and from what place. It was neither a linguistic coincidence nor a superficial cultural borrowing between two different traditions. It was a direct acknowledgement that the prison of the Titans and that of the fallen angels is the same place. Two traditions, two completely different languages, and yet the same name for the same eternal prison. This single piece of information should be enough to reconsider everything we think we know about ancient mythology. But if you need more evidence, the chain of coincidences continues and becomes increasingly unsettling. Now observe the figure of Prometheus, the Titan who stole fire from the sky to give it to humanity. Zeus punished him by chaining him to a rock where an eagle devoured his liver every day for all eternity. His crime was transferring divine knowledge to mortals, an act that violated the laws of the cosmic order. Now remember what Azazel did according to the Book of Enoch. He delivered to humans forbidden celestial secrets. He taught metallurgy, cosmetics, and the arts of war, knowledge that corrupted the entire civilization. His punishment was to be bound hand and foot and thrown into eternal darkness until the day of the great judgment to come. Prometheus and Azazel committed exactly the same sin of giving forbidden knowledge to all of humanity. This linguistic detail has been ignored for centuries, but its theological implication is absolutely enormous. Both received exactly the same punishment: to be chained and suffer eternal torment for their transgression. It irrefutably connects the biblical world with the Greek world through a single devastating word. The story of Prometheus is not an original Greek invention. It is the distorted memory of the tale of Azazel. The Greeks preserved the memory of a fallen angel who was punished for sharing secrets with mortals. They simply changed the name and adapted the details to the cultural framework of their own civilization. Every parallel we discover reinforces the same inevitable conclusion that official history prefers to ignore. Now let's consider the demigod heroes and their role in both traditions in a more detailed and precise manner. Heracles was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, and he possessed a strength that no human could match. His stature was described as gigantic, and his feats included battling monsters of colossal size. Achilles, son of the goddess Thetis and a mortal king, was practically invulnerable and unbeatable in combat. Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae, beheaded Medusa and performed feats that defied all possible human logic. All these heroes share three fundamental characteristics that define them within the Greek tradition. First, they were born from the union between a celestial being and a human woman, without exception in any case. Secondly, they possessed physical abilities that far exceeded the natural limits of any human being. Third, they were known throughout the ancient land as the most famous warriors of their time and generation. Now, reread Genesis 64. The Nephilim were on the earth, and they were the famous men of ancient times. Born from the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men, giants of legendary renown. Greek myths did not arise from nothing. Each one has a verifiable root in the oldest Hebrew texts. The three characteristics are identical in both traditions: mixed origin, supernatural strength, and eternal fame. It's not that the Greeks copied the Bible or that the Bible copied the Greeks in any direct sense. Both cultures independently preserved the memory of the same real and verifiable phenomenon in texts. The Greek demigods are the Hellenized version of the biblical Nephilim, narrated with different vocabulary. The sacred mountain is another element that deserves a much deeper analysis than it is usually given. Mount Hermon rises to over 2,800 meters on the border between Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. The ancient Canaanites regarded it as the dwelling place of the gods and a point of contact between heaven and earth. At its summit, remains of an ancient temple have been found with inscriptions mentioning divine beings. The Book of Enoch identifies this mountain as the exact place where the 200 watchers descended. It was there that they made their solemn oath and began their plan to mingle with humanity forever. Mount Olympus, for its part, served exactly the same function in the religious imagination of the Greeks. It was the mountain where the gods resided, hidden among the clouds, separated from the world of mortals. From there, they descended to interact with humans, influence their wars, and father hybrid children. Two sacred mountains in two different cultures, both serving as a gateway between heaven and earth. Both inhabited by celestial beings who crossed the forbidden border to mingle with humanity. The pattern is too precise and too consistent to be explained as mere cultural coincidence. There is another element that directly connects both traditions and that very few researchers have noticed. The Greeks had the concept of the Golden Age, a primordial era where gods and men lived together. It was a time of abundance and knowledge in which there was neither death nor suffering on earth. The Bible describes something remarkably similar to the antediluvian period where men lived for hundreds of years. Adam lived 930 years, and Methuselah reached a total of 969 years of life. It was an era where celestial knowledge flowed freely, thanks to the presence of the Watchers here. The Greek Golden Age and the biblical antediluvian period described the same lost era of humanity, a time when the barrier between the human and the divine was thin and knowledge flowed without restrictions. Both traditions also agree that that era ended abruptly and catastrophically for the entire earth. The Greeks spoke of floods sent by Zeus, and the Bible describes the great flood sent by God. In both cases, the cause was the same: the corruption generated by the mixture of the celestial and the human. The flood was not an arbitrary punishment, but the direct consequence of an irreversible cosmic transgression. Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha survived the Greek flood, just as Noah and his family survived the biblical flood. In both versions, a just couple is preserved to restart human civilization from scratch, once again. The narrative details change, but the structure of the story is absolutely identical in both cases. Global destruction by water, a single surviving family, and a new beginning for all of humankind. Now we can see the complete picture that emerges when we place both traditions side by side. Celestial beings descend to a sacred mountain and cross the border between their world and that of mortals. They unite with human women and beget a race of famous giants endowed with extraordinary powers. These giants fill the land with violence and corruption until they provoke a devastating divine response. A cosmic war or a divine judgment destroys the existing order and eliminates the giants of the surface. Rebellious beings are locked in an underground prison called Tartarus, chained forever. A just family survives the cataclysm, and humanity begins anew without the influence of those beings. This is not a forced comparison between vaguely similar texts found in distant and different cultures. It is the same story told twice, with the same characters, the same events, and the same ending. Greek mythology was not invented by poets with overflowing imaginations sitting under just any olive tree. It was the collective memory of real events that were transmitted orally and distorted over time. The names changed, the details were embellished, but the core of the story remained intact for millennia. The Watchers became Olympians, and the Nephilim transformed into demigods of Greek legend. The flood became the Titanomachy, and the biblical abyss was preserved with its exact name, Tartarus. Each layer of Greek mythology that we analyze reveals beneath it a biblical truth waiting to be seen. We are not discovering coincidences between two cultures. We are uncovering the real history of humanity. The question is no longer whether Greek mythology has a real basis, but rather how much truth we have ignored until now. The ancients did not invent stories for fun. They preserved the memory of what had truly happened. And that memory points to an event that transformed the earth, the fall of the Watchers and the judgment that followed. 2 towns, 2 languages, 2 mountains, and yet one single story that time has not been able to erase. The truth was always written. It only took reading both books at the same time to be able to discover it. If this mystery has surprised you, subscribe now, because what comes next is even more revealing.